Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast with Ali Rao. Aboud Chaballout is a lawyer, entrepreneur, and founder who's carved out one of the most unconventional paths in the legal world. A former Fulbright fellow, Aboud paused law school to lead a successful healthcare business before returning to earn his JD. Since then, he's launched an AI startup, founded V-Day Law, and built a practice focused on business, estate planning, and innovation. In this episode, we talk about navigating nonlinear careers, the mentors who shaped his journey, and the value of the JD, and how AI is transforming the legal practice. We hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, Aboud, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ali.
It's great to have you on. I want to start off by asking, how are things going at V-Day Law?
Things are going really well. I'm very blessed to say that business has picked up tremendously this year. We've grown exponentially since I founded the firm last year, and we've gone to the point where I just don't have time at all for anything else. So in a good spot where I'm looking for help, looking for attorneys who are interested in going to a smaller shop and generally representing startups and even estate planning, which is another side of my practice, and we can get into that later.
Incredible. Super excited to get into it. I mean, you've kind of done a lot. You've dabbled in startups, you've been in healthcare, and now you have your own practice. So let's take it back, Aboud. I know you went to Glendora High School. Are you from that area?
I am. I grew up in Glendora, California, which is in the deep suburbs, still LA County, but deep suburbs.
Amazing. And then you went to Cornell, and I heard that in another podcast that you were trying to become a doctor, but that sort of changed. So you studied human biology. How did you like Ithaca?
I loved Ithaca. As someone who grew up in the, you could say, perfect climate of Southern California, going to New York, upstate New York specifically, experiencing the snow and experiencing the beauty that is the East Coast was new to me. It was novel. In fact, when I feel bone-chilling cold today, it reminds me of my time at Cornell, and I get very nostalgic. So to me, it's a very positive feeling, which is ironic because most people, it's an ominous feeling. I loved Ithaca. It's a beautiful town, and I loved my time at Cornell.
Love to hear it. And you studied human biology, health, and society. So what motivated you to pick that major?
At the time, I was pre-med, and to me, that was the most interdisciplinary pre-med major that I could find. In hindsight, I now realize that I was never satisfied with just one path. I always gravitated towards non-traditional ways of doing things, and for me, that major was a combination of a lot of different disciplines, which was a non-standard way to go through the pre-med track. And what you'll find, or what I found through my journey, is that the same principles have applied to my career. I've always done things in a somewhat non-traditional manner, but always interdisciplinary. Even in my practice of law today, I'm bringing in different aspects of my experiences to my counsel, to my ability to bring value to the clients that work with me.
Can you say more about why that was non-traditional?
Well, in a human biology, health, and society major, like bio was one aspect of it, but then there was a liberal arts component to the major. There was an economics component to the major. I ended up taking classes throughout campus, and in many ways carved my own path and my own credits that the school ended up accepting.
Really?
So for me, I was able to draw from multiple facets of life, in contrast to just a typical biology major. In a typical biology major, you're going to take organic chemistry, you're going to take chemistry, you're going to take biology, and you're not going to see much else other than what the school may require. Here, I was getting a lot of these other a lot of exposure to different colleges throughout the campus.
That's awesome. Super cool to hear. And you graduated during the financial crisis of 2008. So, what was going through your head as you were thinking about entering, the workforce?
Well, I was fortunate because right after college, I ended up in Amman, Jordan, on a Fulbright scholarship. So I was getting paid from the State Department to basically do research in Amman, and that ended up being the best year of my life. I got to travel all around the world. The research I did turned into a mental health mission in Amman, Jordan, that I organized with a few colleagues. And this was at the time where there was a massive Iraqi refugee crisis in the country. So it was uh, it was a great opportunity to do something to help these folks who really needed help at the time. So we organized a mission where we brought psychologists, therapists, and psychiatrists from the United States to Jordan to deliver pro bono care.
Amazing. And had you been abroad for that long prior to that?
Growing up, I've gone to the region multiple times, but never that long.
Gotcha. That's amazing. And so that was just over a year. Were you thinking about, what were you thinking about in terms of your next move?
So, in terms of the next move, that's where the financial crisis really impacted me. Uh, but I do believe everything happens for a reason. So at the time, I was looking at consulting jobs here in the United States at the big consulting companies. I was looking at banking jobs. I was looking at these opportunities that were available to me, having graduated from Cornell. But nothing was landing. One thing that did land was a consulting opportunity to go back to the region. So through the course of doing my Fulbright, I had done a short stint of an internship at Partners Healthcare, which is this healthcare organization that manages the Massachusetts General Hospital, the Brigham and Women's Hospital. These are all in Boston. They're known as the Harvard, basically the Harvard University health system to some degree locally, and ended up consulting for them in their international team, which took me to Doha, Qatar.
Wow.
This was the year that they won the World Cup bid, so it was an exciting time to be there. There was a lot of positive energy in the air. There's a lot of growth in the country. Tribeca Film Festival was doing something there. So many different organizations were setting up shop there. It was a really exciting time, and I was consulting there for Partners, and we had a really interesting project around the decentralization of the national healthcare system there. So I learned a lot about management consulting, a lot about healthcare management in particular, and a lot about how governments think about their health systems.
Amazing. Amazing. And so you were doing that was that when you were at Mass General Brigham?
Correct. Partners. The umbrella organization is called Partners Healthcare.
Got it. Got it. So you're in the Middle East, you're in Doha, and then were you thinking about law school at this time?
I was. So when I got back from Jordan, came home, I decided that I wasn't going to go to medical school anymore, particularly because I just felt like I wanted to make a much larger impact. So I decided to deviate slightly. But in my family, if I wasn't going to be a doctor, I had to have I can't just say no med school, right? Like there has to be an offering. So my offering at the time, just quick thinking on my part, is law school. So I had promised my mother in particular that I was going to go to law school, and I did. I applied, when I was doing my consulting work in Doha, and eventually got acceptance into two universities in particular. One was Georgetown, the other was Berkeley. Decided to go to Berkeley.
Amazing. And tell me a little bit about your application and specifically your LSAT journey.
So my application was very unique, particularly because I had my Fulbright in Amman and I was able to speak to my work there. And I had my consulting opportunity in Doha, which I was able to speak about in my application. So that really set me apart from other applicants. And also while I was doing the application process, took the time to try to talk to folks at the university that I was applying to. So at Berkeley, the one of the deans, I don't remember if it was the dean or if it was the gentleman in charge of the application process. He had a couple of events. I attended virtually, made sure to connect with him, ask intelligent questions, and just express interest. I knew that I wanted that I really wanted to go to these universities, and eventually, ultimately, I think that helped a lot. Right, it's just making it clear that you're interested, giving creating some sort of a warm relationship. I really believe in that.
100%. Yeah. A lot of it is sort of about putting your best foot forward and selling yourself to a certain extent and networking. But that's awesome. So you went to Berkeley Law. Now, what's interesting is I noticed it took you the same amount of time as medical school to actually get your JD. So I noticed it was from 2011 to 2017. And so I'm curious, like, let's take it back to when you first got into law school. Like, what were you thinking about? Were you just thinking, okay, I'm going to get my JD and go work in big law or start my own firm? Like, what was your initial mindset about your future?
So when I went to law school, I had just gotten back from my overseas journey, and at the time, I had a lot of friends who were starting startups and either in the Bay Area or in New York, and it really caught my attention. As I had mentioned before, I've always been gravitated towards non-traditional way of doing things, and being a founder is the ultimate manifestation of that, in my opinion. Especially technology founder, where you're building something that doesn't exist, or if you're not necessarily building futuristic technology, but you're building something in a space that's complicated and confusing. And ultimately, that's what I ended up doing right after my first year in law school. So towards the end, an opportunity arose in talking to who ended up being my co-founder to launch an interesting company in a very interesting niche, which is litigation finance, in the occupational medical space in California. It's something that you wouldn't really hear about unless you're in it, unless you're around that space, or unless someone tells you about it. But ultimately, was an opportunity. Towards the end of my first year, we closed our first deal, which gave me the courage to put law school on hold for a little bit. I talked to the dean, and he informed me something that I didn't know, which is that pursuant to the ABA's rules, you have 7 years to graduate from the moment that you start law school,
Wow.
if you want your JD, and if you don't want to reapply. Okay, so there was some sort of rule there. Don't quote me on it. And by the way, I may be butchering it because I never actually researched it. I just took their word for it. And I just took sabbatical after my first year to launch this company. And that ended up that journey ended up having me launch 3 more companies during the time.
Wow.
3-4 years in, just looking at the calendar, and I'm realizing my 7 years to graduate is coming to a close. And I had a decision to make: either I go and finish, or I don't. And ultimately decided to go finish what I started with the JD while running my companies.
Wow.
So I was so I was running my companies in Southern California, but Berkeley was in Northern California. So I was basically flying back and forth either every week or
Wow.
every other week.
That's
I learned a
insane.
lot about how points work with the airlines, and I got really, really, really good at that game.
Who's your airline of choice?
At the time, it was Southwest, and
Yeah.
the reason for that is that when you're purchasing airfare on points, without status, without anything, you can basically cancel flights, get your points back, and buy new flights. A lot of times, I didn't know when I needed to be back, or when I didn't really know 100% what my flight schedule was going to be. So I'd book at the beginning of the semester 20, 30 flights at a time, knowing that I
Wow.
can just cancel what I didn't need, and it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, Southwest is the best. I mean, I think there was something about them like being bought out by private equity, and there's no more free baggage and no more
Ah,
flex seating. I think that's coming in the next few months, which kind of sucks. I love Southwest as well,
yeah.
but
And Northern California to Southern California was great. You know, they fly to great airports. So locally, it was fantastic.
amazing. And so, Aboud, I mean, as a law student, typically folks are risk averse, but you actually sought out risk. So, I mean, that's kind of crazy. I'm curious. First and foremost, how did you meet your co-founder, and how did you convince yourself to take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, my co-founder actually was my father. So I met him because him and my mother gave birth to me. So
Fair enough.
that was that was the experience. He at the time was just exiting a company that he had built prior, and was looking at his next move. And we started exploring this super niche industry, which he knew nothing about and I knew nothing about. But someone had just introduced us to it. So we started exploring it while I was doing my 1L year. And ultimately, as I had mentioned, we ended up closing. In our exploration, we ended up closing a deal that gave us both the confidence to move forward and start dedicating our full effort to it. Yes, it is a risky thing, and I'll tell you the most risky aspect of leaving after your 1L year is that the standard journey of a law student is you go through your 1L year, you try to perform as best as you can, and then you're supposed to get an internship at the end of your 1L year, and then you're supposed to get another internship after your 2L year, and then one of those internships turns into a job, right? Technically, that is the path of least resistance to getting the best job possible as a law student. And if the goal is to go to big law, it's very difficult to get in any other way. Um, I had a internship opportunity at Latham after my 1L year, and I decided to forego that so that I can have my experience of just launching a company and starting from scratch and going through that journey.
Incredible. And what ended up happening with Optimal Healthcare Recovery? Was there an exit, or what happened with that?
Yeah, so that took its own course. That was, you can call it the main company. And through the course of building that and learning about the healthcare industry, I ended up launching a few other sorts of companies. So we ended up launching an urgent care and a pharmacy, and eventually selling those. I started a medical billing company, a medical collection company. So we had the services component that we were delivering to uh, local practices in the area. And I ended up learning a lot about the healthcare system, about how money flows in our healthcare system, a lot about the pain points in our healthcare system, and how wild it is. I used to tell people that I was living in the underbelly of our healthcare system. And eventually, after that, launched what ended up being a technology healthcare company in the AI space before generative AI before generative AI became a thing. So after law school, I worked for a firm and then dedicated my time to this AI component. And I used my learnings from my prior healthcare experience to launch that. The AI company, we ended up getting funding from the DoD, Department of Defense, and ended up being a very, very exciting and interesting project. To answer your question, though, what happened to the original company? The state of California changed its rules. So what we were doing is we were purchasing unpaid B2B medical debt in California. So B2B meaning an insurance company owes a medical practice or a medical entity um, owes basically it's insurance debt on the practice. So we would buy those billings and then we would litigate the insurance companies at scale. And
Gotcha.
what happened is through the insurance lobby, a Senate bill was passed that effectively wiped out a lot of the supply of what we called paper. It wiped out a lot of supply of this paper in the market, and so there wasn't the future of that business didn't exist anymore, right?
Gotcha.
So that was a slow wind down over a period of time.
Amazing. What a journey. What a
Yeah.
journey. And just I want to bring it back to your time at Berkeley Law. I mean, I'm curious at this day and age, you know, you've obviously founded an AI startup and we're seeing the rise of AI and that sort of thing. What is your take on the value of a JD in this day and age?
It's a very interesting question. My belief is that the value of a JD is going to remain. I fundamentally believe that people need lawyers. It's a service, um, not so dissimilar to a medical doctor delivering healthcare to their patients. Like people need lawyers. They need lawyers so that they can sleep better at night. They need lawyers so that they can move through transactions. They need lawyers for a variety of things. And at some point, if we're going to talk about AI eliminating the need for a lawyer, then at that point AI has eliminated the need for everything, doctors, any sort of service professional. While that may happen at some point in the future, I think for the foreseeable future, the value of the JD is going to remain because at some point you still need someone to be focused on that. One person can't be focused on everything in life. Uh, Another part of that analysis is um, when we think about AI, we can't think about AI as applied to law as a whole. We got to think about what aspect of law. Are we talking about corporate law? Are we talking about personal injury? Are we talking about estate planning? What are we talking about exactly? I think certain aspects maybe there won't be as much of a need for JDs, but other aspects we will need JDs for a long time. Like what I can speak to um, is corporate law, right? So right now you have businesses, they review contracts, they need to do some fundraising, they need to do a lot of different tasks of that where lawyers are involved. Yes, some of those tasks will be replaced by some automated tool, but at some point you need a driver to that tool because if you're a CEO and you're busy, you're not going to have time to go to an AI and give it the contract and then have it give you something back and then make some sort of a determination about whether or not you're going to trust what was given. Maybe that will be a reality where it's so automated that you can trust it in the future, but right now it's not there. You need a driver, and as a result of needing a driver, if you're serious about what you're doing, you're going to want that driver to be a lawyer, not an operations your operations partner or your accounting partner or your finance partner. Like you're going to want someone whose brain is thinking about that and is driving it. So I think that the value of the JD will remain for a while. But if we want to think about a world where everything is fully automated, I think we're going to have a much deeper conversation about AI than just law and the value of a JD.
Yeah, I think that's a great take. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of describing it as a tool that's going to level people up. And there was a lot of talk about doom and gloom when the internet came out. And I think, based on what you're saying, it's going to be pretty similar. You're either going to use it and leverage it, or you're going to fall behind.
Correct. The way I view it specifically when it comes to the practice of law, I think AI is a leveling field, and I can speak to that directly as a solo practitioner. Not solo anymore. I do have a partner now, but someone who's at a small law firm without the resources of big law firms. Now with a $20 a month Claude subscription, you get access to language and inspiration that you didn't have before. So it's a leveling. It levels the playing field, in my opinion, and and I don't view it as doom and gloom at all. I did for a little bit, but then I started
Really?
reading into it. I started reading into it a little bit more, and then I started. Uh, the media will try to paint a picture, but then I saw some cracks in the seams, and apparently there are some predictions out there. For example, let's talk about engineers, right? Like right now, there's a lot of talk about vibe coding and using AI to code up software and to code up various apps. And despite the existence of these tools now, I was reading an article where the author was making the case for actually needing for the demand for engineers to actually go up in the next couple of years. Um, Now, it could also be true that demand is going to go down, but I'm choosing to believe in the former because I think the economic activity is also going to grow. So at some point, you still need an engineer to do something. But if today one company is starting, I'm just using numbers here for illustration purposes. If one company is being started every hour, maybe with AI, you can have 100 companies being started every hour. So even though each company individually needs less engineers, I think in the aggregate, you're still going to need a lot of engineers because the last mile of these applications need something technical a lot of times, especially if you're trying to build a serious company and a serious application. And I think it's going to be the same thing with lawyers. You're going to have a lot of your tasks automated, but I think the economic activity is going to be so much greater that you're still going to need a lot of lawyers to support that demand.
Yeah.
That's the narrative I choose to believe and subscribe to. I have colleagues that vehemently disagree with me. I have clients that vehemently disagree with me. They think we're going to be gone soon, but I disagree. I think we're
Yeah.
going to be around for a while.
I love that take. And Aboud, I think just devil's advocate, I want to push back. Like at the time we're recording this in mid 2025, like I'm seeing so many headlines in the valley of companies like Microsoft, LinkedIn, just doing, these layoffs due to the rise of AI. So I'm curious how you're thinking about that.
I think that there's a lot of layoffs, but also you have companies hiring people back because they're realizing it's still a little bit too early. And I want to be very clear. Like I'm not the type of person that's short-sighted about the power of the technology. I was an AI founder myself, so I know what it is. I know the goals. I know and I've been tracking it as well. And I am now an avid user of these technologies as well. And I'm rooting for the opportunities and the potential that's going to create for all of us. So I'm
You're
not
an
short sighted.
optimist.
I'm not short sighted. I am an optimist about it, and I do believe that there are going to be layoffs. But I also believe there's going to be different types of opportunities that are going to arise. For example, now more than ever, starting your own company and generating revenue from your own company is more doable than ever. Like you can actually, so when you think about starting a company, it used to be that you needed a lot of money to build an application because you need an engineer. Engineers are expensive. Unless you can find an engineer that really believes in you and believes in your vision to join you as a co-founder. If that doesn't exist, you're going to have to pay, and you're paying top dollar usually. Now that barrier isn't there anymore, and let me explain why and how that's not at odds with what I was saying earlier. The journey of starting a company is usually like running an experiment, right? Like you have a hypothesis and you need to test that hypothesis. And the name of the game is to try to test the hypothesis with as little cost as possible. That process is what's known as a product market fit, because what you need to prove to yourself is that your product, your service, whatever it is, has product market fit, meaning there's a customer out there that's willing to pay you hard-earned dollars for that product or service, and then that process is repeatable at scale across many customers. A lot of people go through the build it and they'll come framework, and while that may work for some people, for the vast majority, that's not going to work. The smartest founders know how to run experiments rapidly, know how to find drop what doesn't work until they find product market fit, and then once they find product market fit, they double down and they try to explode in their growth as much as possible. That process over time has gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Even before AI, it had been getting cheaper. Now it's the cheapest it's ever been, because now you can launch what's known as an MVP, a minimal viable product, for as close to free as possible. So think about that. Like if you wanted to go launch a company now, you could run these experiments at almost no cost until you find a product market fit, and then double down. Right? Then you can hire the engineers and the lawyers, but you don't need any of that until you get to that point. So it's an opportunity that wasn't there before, but it is here now. And if you look at some of these large companies, like Anthropic, for example, you'll probably see headlines now that I've mentioned it, if you haven't seen them already, where the CEO there is predicting the first unicorn that is run by one person.
I saw that.
By one person. Okay. So, I mean, look, a lot of this is sensational. But the point is well taken, is that now with much smaller teams, you could build big companies. But not the whole world isn't about building massive companies. For a lot of people, it's about building a lifestyle business. Now you could do it. You could generate revenue while needing much less capital up front. So yes, jobs are going to be eliminated, but I think new jobs are going to come out, and be economic. The opportunity to have an economic impact is greater than ever. But again, I also hear the other side, and I'm not so short-sighted, but I'm choosing to kind of believe in this narrative, and try to participate as much as possible. And if you do believe in this narrative, then the incentive is there to learn how to use these tools, keep track of the advancements that are coming out, and try to ride that wave as fast as possible. So one thing that I'm doing in law, I'm in the process of doing it actually as we speak, is to start getting a group of lawyers together who are interested in the technology, interested in the space, and have everyone start leveraging each other as a soundboard and as an opportunity to learn how to accelerate in terms of the application of these tools. How are you using AI, and how is it helping your life as a transactional lawyer? What kind of skills have you learned that have saved you 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day? What kind of skills have you learned that has propelled your ability to take on more clients? What skills have you learned to add even more value to your clients than you were contributing today. So I think it's got to be intentional, and I think it's also a team. It's going to be a team effort, a group effort. If you think about your industry or your cohorts, I think leveraging their knowledge base as well is really important in basically keeping up with the times and staying afloat.
Love it, love it. I mean, I love the optimism. It sounds like, maybe one door closes, but several more open. And I absolutely agree and love that attitude. And I did also see that the first one person $1 billion company, which is going to be, I think, crazy to see. I mean, even in addition to AI, like outsourcing so many job functions overseas, or like, HR, I've seen all these like startups where they outsource HR and stuff like that. So there's definitely a ton of opportunity.
Yeah,
Aboud, I do.
Ali,
Yeah.
Ali, if I may just add one more thing. In law, we're no strangers to technology trying to eliminate us in certain capacities, or even reduce our ability to generate billings. Like think about templated work. Like I'll talk about estate planning, right? So part of my practice is estate planning. There are many tools online now where you can set up a DIY trust. So if you go to trustandwill.com, you could set up a trust right now for $700 or something like that. It's a great service, but people still choose to work with attorneys. So there is a cohort of folks that will choose to do it themselves, and then there's a cohort that A, doesn't have time to do it themselves, doesn't even want to think about doing it themselves, or B, their situation is a little bit complicated, and actually need the help of a lawyer. Like at some point, yes, we give legal counsel, but at some other point, people just want the service. Like they want things done for them. Even on the corporate side, in my corporate representation, founders will often, the work that comes with the contract or the financing that I was doing for them. There's a lot of individual tasks that they have me do simply because they want the service. Like they could do it themselves. They don't need me, right? But they
Totally.
want the service.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can't learn the rule against perpetuities for $700.
Yeah. Exactly. So if templated work didn't get rid of us, I think AI it's not like as easy as saying, yeah, lawyers are gone. I think it's a lot more nuanced.
I love it. Love it. And I know we spoke a lot about AI. I feel like we could talk about that for a while because I'm also super passionate about it. But I do want to talk about, your most recent ventures. We can touch on Diagnose, which is the AI startup you referenced. And then I'd love to talk about Vide Law.
Sure.
So it looks like you did actually work at a firm for a year and a half after graduating law school, but you left quickly to start Diagnose. So can you tell me a little bit more about that journey?
Yes. So after law school, I joined a law firm that was focused on basically business owners. So we were representing business owners in California, and we were also representing their estates. So that's where I learned about the intersection of business and estate planning. And having been a founder myself, now in my practice, I pretty much do the same thing that I was doing at the law firm, except the way I look at it is now I'm founder focused, specifically with a technology founder focus. So that means I'm representing startups that have raised venture capital, and I am helping these companies in let's call it in the day to day of their operations, which includes commercial agreements. It includes equity grants, cap table management. It also includes fundraising, M&A, and so on and so forth. And then extends into representing the founder themselves as they generate wealth through the progress of their company. So that means now I'm helping them with inheritance planning. and that I'm helping them with their tax planning, and sometimes with asset protection, just depending on what's going on in their lives. So a lot of the skills that I learned in terms of what I'm doing now, I got it from the firm that I had worked for. My boss, Mark Lobb, there was brilliant, and I really enjoyed working with him, and I learned a ton from him, and I have a lot to. I owe him a lot in terms of just the vision that I learned there.
So I do want to ask Aboud, you spoke really highly of Mark Lobb. Can you just briefly speak about how important it is to find a good mentor, especially when you're early in your career?
Yeah, sure. Mark Lobb was great because he wanted to be there for lawyers that worked for him. He had founded the firm himself and had a ton of experience just going through the ups and downs of building a law practice, and he wanted to kind of give associates at the firm a little bit of that experience to those who were interested. So on my end, I understood early on that mentorship is very important, and I would take him up on every opportunity to grab coffee or lunch or even dinner, and just talk about the business of law, talk about uh, exciting um, developments in the law, talk about the operation of law and representation, and how to maximize the value that you're giving a client. Like at some point, one needs to realize that clients are human beings, and they have needs that need to be addressed or problems that need to be solved. And the question is like, how do you do that both efficiently, but do it in a way where the client feels great and feels like they got exactly what they need, and their problem is solved even better than they were hoping it would be solved. So we had a lot, multiple opportunities to talk about that, and I think it's bi-directional, right? It's about finding someone who wants to give the time, but also you as a person, as the mentee, you being the person that is mentored, to show your mentor that you're serious. Show them that the advice that you're getting from them is important. Applying it and showing them that you're applying it. And in my opinion, that's how you develop really tight knit relationships. And I still work with Mark today, even
Wow,
with my own law firm now. So
incredible.
he will send me work from time to time, and I'm keep reconnecting with him and learn from him, and I've sent him work. So
So
it's a
cool.
win-win.
It's not a zero sum game. I mean, it's so
Correct.
there's a lot of law firm founders, but there's enough work to go around, it sounds like.
Correct. There's a
Amazing.
lot of work to go around. And in fact, too much work to go around. And this is what a lot of people don't realize is that, yes, it's competitive, but at some point you'll realize that the demand for legal services is high, especially if you're a good lawyer. If you're a good lawyer, you will have more demand than you can handle over time. In fact, that was the fundamental thesis of my practice when I started. I wanted to build a small boutique law firm that delivers elite legal services. And I had a very very simple thesis: is that I just have to survive for 1 to 2 years. That's all. If I can survive for 1 to 2 years and repeatedly announce what it is that I'm doing, at some point people will start calling, and that's exactly what happened. And then you just end up getting too busy, and then the name of the game is finding help or finding other lawyers, smaller law firms or small law shops who you can refer to, so that your clients are taken care of. So and this is also something that a lot of clients don't understand either. Like, it's a lot of times you work with clients and they're afraid that lawyers are going to overbill them. But the reality is that busy lawyers don't have time to just drag their feet on projects. They just need to finish them because they have 2, 3 other clients that are waiting on their contracts or their project or whatever it is that they need help on.
I love
Um,
it.
but yeah, Mark Lob is great, and I really appreciate that friendship and mentorship.
That's awesome to hear. And let's go to your AI startup, Diagnose. Curious, you're working at a law firm. How did this idea even come about?
So the idea came about from my prior startup journey when I was running the litigation finance company and the clinic and the pharmacy. I had learned a lot about a lot about the problems that medical providers face in our healthcare system, and I started it at a time when the conversation around machine learning was picking up. So before generative AI was a thing, but during the time where machine learning was becoming increasingly popular because of the new technologies and techniques and methodologies that were emerging. And my idea was very simple. I wanted to apply that technology and capability to some of the problems that I had observed in my prior operational experience running my other companies.
Yeah, so you saw an opportunity with machine learning and you took it and you went all in.
Correct. And I was at Berkeley, right? So I had met many people at Berkeley. Like Berkeley is a startup, capital right there with Stanford, and ended up joining an incubator that was focused on Berkeley founders, and there was a domino effect from there. Um, but absolutely 100%, it was a continuation of my prior journey.
Love it. That's awesome, Aboud. Now let's move on to Vide Law, your current practice that and your partner Omar. Did you meet Omar in law school?
Yeah, yeah. So when I went back to law school, him and I were classmates at that time.
Gotcha. And it's just you two currently,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and it's by the way, it's he's not the only Berkeley alum or friend that I've worked with. Yeah, when I was running my startups, I always made sure to keep my foot in the practice of law. And either I was moonlighting or taking overflow work from other lawyers. And these lawyers actually ended up being lawyers who were my friends who had happened to start their own practices. So one of my good friends, Yasser Ali, who I overlapped with in my 1L year, was running explosively growing estate planning practice in Arizona. And when he had learned that I was doing some estate planning work, in fact, he had randomly called me a year prior to when we started working together. He had called me while I was at a conference called Heckerling in Florida, which is the premier estate planning practice. The law firm I was working for had sent me there that year to represent the firm, and he was surprised to hear that I was doing this work. Flash forward a year later, when I was open to doing some moonlighting, started working together and learned a lot from him about how to run an estate planning law firm, learned how to build an actual estate planning practice. And I owe him a lot for that. And roughly around the same time, started to do some work for a really close friend of mine, Mehdi Ali. He is a Stanford law grad, had worked at some of the largest law firms in the Bay Area, and had recently left to start his own practice that was focused on venture-backed startups, and slowly started working with him and got to see firsthand the practice of law as a solo when it comes to these startups and startup founders. Learned how to bring in clients, learned how to market clients, and owe Mehdi a lot for that. And in fact, he had trusted me so much that at some point I was actively running a good portion of his business. So
Wow.
um, this, looking back at it, I realized how important it is to have a support network that you can pull from to launch your career, especially if you're not going to go to big law directly out of law school, and especially if you are going to go through if you are going to go through a non-traditional path as a lawyer. I owe them a lot.
So good, so good. And sounds like you're going to pay it forward, and that's awesome to hear, Aboud. I guess what do you prefer more, being the owner of a law firm or a startup founder?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Ali. I think both are great. At some point in time, my life and what I wanted out of life and what was interesting me at that time lent itself to being a startup founder. Right now, I could tell you that I'm loving being a law firm founder. And to me, the two go hand in hand. The reason is because I was a startup founder, I've navigated the trenches that startup founders navigate right now. I have gone through many of the challenges, gone through the ups and downs of just economic opportunity, but also emotional capacity. Right, like running a startup is one of the most difficult and challenging things emotionally. It's also one of the most challenging things intellectually. So I've had that, and I can sympathize with founders going through it right now. But more importantly, I've had to overcome different challenges, both legally and operationally. So when I'm counseling founders now, all of that is coming out, and it's for that reason why I'm having a lot of fun now. It's because I'm feeling like I'm able to add a ton of value, because I'm not just telling you why this provision in the contract is not good for you or good for your company. I'm telling you how to play chess with it, because I've done it before. And that to me is a lot of fun. Like talking strategy, kicking the tire around on how to grow the company, while doing it from the perspective of lawyer. But by the way, for some of my clients, I'm basically a fractional general counsel, so I'm actively contributing to the growth of the company. It's a lot of fun. The way I think of it, it's kind of like being an uncle, right? Your brother or sister has a child, a baby. You can play with the baby when they come over, and then you kind of hand it off when they leave, right? It feels like the same way. I could do the startup thing as a law firm focused on startup founders, but I don't have to live it again, because building a startup is actually one of the most difficult things that you can do in life, in my opinion, from a career perspective.
Wow.
It's not easy. It's glorified, but it's not easy. So
Amazing.
for me, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm feeling like I can contribute so much value, and I plan to do this for a while.
Wow. Sounds like it absolutely goes hand in hand, just
Yeah.
drawing from your previous experience in the startup world. So awesome. I mean, looking back on your career, it's like, I feel like you couldn't have, maybe not have predicted where you would have ended up, but looking back, it makes so much sense looking at your career path. Just really awesome to see.
100%, 100%, Ali. And if I may add to why else I'm having a lot of fun, it's because I'm feeling like the work is incredibly rewarding. And so part of that has come from my experience being a founder, and really using that as a foundation for my counsel today. But also my decision to keep an estate planning element to my practice has been very fulfilling, because in the estate planning side of things, now we're not talking about a company, we're talking about a human being. What we're really talking about now is death, or we're talking about how to improve your family's position while you're alive. So there's a continuum that I'm operating on, where I'm working with founders in their company, and as they're generating their wealth or in the midst of it, I am counseling them on their life specifically. So how does that manifest itself? You're a founder. You're going to go into a Series A. I'm gonna tell you right before your Series A, hey, have you thought about QSBS? Oh, what's QSBS? Oh, educate them. It's one of the biggest tax benefits, and it's extremely meaningful. So now we're having a conversation about them and their wealth and the planning that they can do around it, and that inherent in that planning is going to be a conversation about, well, what happens if they were to pass, and what comes next. So you're creating these trusts to optimize your tax position, but then what's going to happen next if something happens to you? And now we're having like a heart-to-heart conversation about that and all the dynamics that go
Wow.
into it. So that to me has been incredibly fulfilling, and it's been incredibly rewarding, and it's actually one of the reasons why I'm able to build such a close relationship with my clients.
That's crazy. Well, that's so interesting. Talking about both the beginning and the end in your
Yes.
conversations. Aboud, what an interesting career you've had. Last question for you. Looking back on your career, what advice would you give to your younger self? Maybe specifically when you're a 1L at Berkeley Law.
This type of question is always hard for me, just because my journey has been so non-traditional, and I would have told myself not to be afraid of the different twists and turns that life may take you on. And then when you're and what why that? It's because if you're gonna if life is taking its turns and opportunities are being presented and you're going for it, you can either go for it and be anxious about it, or you can go for it and just go all in and not worry, right? Like not mentally worry about what the future is going to hold, because it's going to be okay, right? It's going to be okay. So I would have given myself that advice just so that I could feel better, right? When you leave that big internship 1L year, it's not easy. It's scary. It's like, oh man, if I don't take this, I may never practice interesting law ever again, because in those days when you're in your 1L year, the only thing that matters is getting the big job, and because that's the only thing that matters, you think that there's no other opportunity or experience in law that is going to be equally fulfilling, and equally rewarding, and by the way, equally economically incentivizing, right? So you're like tunnel vision, and if you have an opportunity and you do want to take that turn, just my advice would be just be confident about it and don't look back, and don't worry about what the future holds, because it's going to be okay.
Amazing. Man, this fired me up. I really appreciate your time, Aboud. This was such a great episode. Absolutely loved hearing about your career. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Ali, thank you for having me. It's been an honor, and look forward to talking soon.